This is Truman, and welcome again to a great verse for today. Here we hear the agony of Abraham in Genesis chapter 17, verse 18. Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. But God said, no. Now, the context of this passage is very important. God had promised Abraham the promised land and a lad, a son. God had promised that through barren Sarah, God would bring forth a supernatural birth. That son would be named Isaac. Well, as Abraham and Sarah were in the promised land for 10 years, Sarah became very impatient. Not only was she barren, but she was getting old, and she felt like she would never have a son. So she convinced Abraham to take her handmaid, Hagar, that she got from Egypt, and make her a concubine wife, and to have a son through Hagar. Well, Abraham took Hagar, and indeed Ishmael was born. Now, after Ishmael is born, Abraham puts his affection and hope in Ishmael. 13 years more would pass. And now Abraham is looking to Ishmael to be the promised son. But God has a different plan. Abraham did not wait for God to work supernaturally. So Abraham took natural means to bring to pass God's promise. And so now, when Abraham is 99 and Sarah is nearly 90, God comes to Sarah and Abraham and says this in Genesis 17. Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a son? And he pleads with God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Let him be the one. In agony, he wants God to accept Ishmael. But God said, no. God said, no. Sarah, your wife, shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant. Now, there's so many principles of biblical truth here. Ishmael is a picture of the way of the flesh and the law, and Isaac is a picture of the way of grace through faith. One born after the flesh, Ishmael, pictures the false believer. One born by the promise, that's Isaac, pictures the true believer. But I want us to look at Ishmael's agony here. And when I read this passage many, many years ago, I just felt led to write this poem, and I want to share this poem with you now. Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And listen to the agony of Abraham. Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. Oh, that my dreams might come true. Oh, that God would bless that which I planned and accept what I gave birth to. But my affections are already fixed. Lord, I cannot bear to let them go. Oh, Ishmael is flesh of my own flesh. It will break my heart if you say no. But Ishmael shall not live before me, for the promised seed is yet to come. The barren womb will give birth to Isaac, and through him the chosen one. Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee, will one day be your cry, and those things that you have given birth to, God will ask to those you too die. And only that which the Spirit has birthed can bear fruit that will remain, and you must wait for God's Isaac to know Christ's rule and reign. Ishmael must first be surrendered, then Isaac will be born. than an altar built for Isaac, where again your heart will break and mourn. Those who follow the faith of Abraham will be asked to labor twice, the Ishmaels of our own choosings, and God's Isaac that we hold fast. But your sorrow will turn to gladness when that which you gave you receive. In resurrected life you now worship, your life exchanged for his life in thee. Now freed from the law of bondage and the flesh that made us weak, we fulfill the law of righteousness in Christ our Isaac that we seek. Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee is no longer my heart's cry, but waiting on God's Isaac, it is Christ who lives and not I. Many Christians have repeated Abraham's cry, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. We know that God had a purpose for our life, and after waiting for God to fulfill that purpose and answer our prayers, sometimes like Abraham, we in the natural, in our flesh, tried to fulfill that promise for God. And God still wants to fulfill that promise, but he wants to do it in a way of faith, a way of bearing spiritual fruit that remains by abiding in Christ. May you be blessed today with this great verse.